Okay, so we are going to talk for the next 25 minutes about understanding poverty, and really understanding poverty and the essence of poverty is the core aspect of our ministry as Vincentians. This is during our home visits. There's a couple of things that we try to do. We seek to understand the needs of the family, number one, and the resources that they could use to help them move forward. Those needs are often immediate, but many times you can, through that conversation, learn about deeper needs that they have or patterns that exist that in some instances, many instances, that we as Vincentians can help with. Here's a quote from Blessed Frederick Ozanam that I think really tells the story and centers us. How do we learn about poverty? Well, according to Blessed Frederick, the knowledge of social well-being and reform is to be learned not only from books nor the public platform, but by climbing the stairs to the poor man's garret, sitting by his bedside, feeling the same cold that pierces him. When these conditions have been examined in all different parts of the country, it is then and only then that we know the elements of these formidable problems. And just to further that a bit, as we do home visits, it is really incumbent on us that we approach them without judgment, with humility, and seeking to understand. And we can only do that if we have people talking to us and we've opened our ears to listen to them. I have a quote from Pope Francis that I like. He said in his Let Us Dream encyclical, "We can't serve others unless we let their reality speak to us." So that kind of centers us for the work that we do. So exploring poverty. Let's talk a little bit about that. And instead of sharing at your table, let's just share openly here a few examples of things that happen in a family's life that would cause them to call on St. Vincent for help.
Loss of job is one of the bigger ones that I find.
Loss of job.
Sudden illness.
Sudden illness, absolutely.
Don't pay benefits.
Loss of spouse.
Absolutely. Loss of a spouse.
Desertion of a spouse
Desertion of a spouse.
with children of it and family.
How about all the folks out there who are living on a fixed income and watching their utilities bills go up and their rent go up and food prices go up and their income is fixed? It must feel like being in a room that's filling with water and there's nothing you can do about it. So there are a broad range of issues that can bring someone, a neighbor, to our, and let me just make a sidebar here. We term the folks that we see as our neighbors. Okay, we had used St. Vincent in the past used to use the word client. Some of you, Craig can remember that. Others who've been around a while can remember that. And we really have tried to get away from that language. They're not clients. They're not paying us to help them. They're just our neighbors. They're our neighbors who need our help and our love. So let's talk a little bit about those patterns of poverty in the United States. This slide shows what folks in the social service professions, how they would categorize poverty. So you have situational poverty, which is more temporary circumstances. Divorce, injury, being laid off, hopefully those things are a temporary issue for folks. Then you have lifelong challenges, which can include physical disability, long-term injuries, or long-term personal issues. It can include mental illness. We, as Vincentians, we see more mental illness all the time. The folks, when we look at our shelter guests, Deb mentioned that there are 500 guests in shelter typically at any time. We find that about a third of them have some type of mental illness that just makes other challenges that they're faced with that much more significant. And then the last category, which we'll spend more time talking about, is generational poverty, which is kind of defined as poverty that persists over 2+ generations. So oftentimes you find these in combination, and we don't want to stereotype people, but keeping this kind of construct in mind, I think, just helps us understand it a little better and understand how we can approach helping our neighbors. So generational poverty is a person born to a poor family in a poor community more likely to grow up to be poor. What do you think?
Yes.
Why is that?
A child will grow up in an environment of low expectations.
So low expectations.
Just a small segment in my observation, what I've seen is a lack of available and immediate transportation, i.e. a child at home is about ready to graduate from high school and really doesn't have access to a car to get to a job, which leads to other problems, of course, which essentially they can't make an income because they can't get to where they need to go. So a lack of transportation is certainly one segment that is overlooked, but I see it all the time.
Yeah. Very true.
Very true.
Somehow breaking out of an environment, it's what they know.
Yeah. Right.
It's what they know, it's what they're used to. They figure out a way to get by, and there's no forward thrust.
A child in
Those situations as we all did growing up, we look around at our parents and our extended family and our friends for an understanding of how to do something we don't know how to do. And in cases of generational poverty, they've never been taught. The parents don't know. So how are they going to teach the children anything any different than what they know? Jean, you're going to say something?
I think to the environment, you have pockets of poverty. You see this very much in Dayton. There are certain areas where poverty is expected. That's my neighbor's poor, I'm poor, with the whole township is poor.
Right.
And gee, if you go down the road a ways, look at all those rich people. It's a tough situation for somebody that lives in a pocket of poverty.
It is.
It is, no question.
A lot of it is that as the normal.
Yeah.
They don't know to look elsewhere to see if things are different elsewhere.
Right.
So the poverty they live in is just normal, and there's no reason to challenge it.
Right.
And then there's also societal barriers that prevent them from expanding on that if they do notice.
Exactly.
You know, many of you who are home visitors would have the experience of walking into a house and there's just stuff all over the place, clothes and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And you could immediately think, well, why doesn't somebody, you know, at least clean this up? It's better for the kids if you clean this up. Well, that parent, that young teenage mom probably grew up exactly like where she lives. So I think understanding this helps us better manage our reaction and expectations as we go in to visit our neighbors. So it's not just money either. Poverty really is defined as a lack of resources, and that includes all kinds of things. It includes skills, education, connections, role models, support systems. And, you know, situational poverty, it's more likely that it's one or two of those things in situational poverty, but it's longer term, especially when it's generational poverty, it is a multiple. You're hit with a multitude of issues that impact those families in generational poverty. So what are some of the contributors to long-term poverty? This is, you know, just a construct to help understand this. The first contributor really is behavior. It's what we hear and see in the home visit process. We may think, you know, you have somebody who calls a call taker and says, you know, my utilities are being turned off today. And you may think, well, why are you just calling me today when the utilities are going to be turned off today? Why couldn't you plan and call, you know, they don't have those planning skills. And we'll talk a little bit, the tyranny of the moment is another issue that impacts them. And so much of this goes back to who's there to teach them. Where do they learn expectations? Where do they learn behaviors? And are those the right expectations and behaviors? So in poverty, obviously it's not easy. There's a concept, as I just mentioned, called tyranny of the moment. And that's really key. It's just an overwhelming, constant stream of crises. So, you know, you can see this in the little cloud there. The rent is past due, no food, the baby's coughing, utilities shut off, notice, car breaks down. And there is nothing unusual about this. It may sound unusual. In our life, it would be unusual, probably, most of us. It's not unusual for our neighbors, especially those in generational poverty, that they have just that cascade of problems that causes them to try to deal with whatever the worst problem is at that very moment, and anything else they just have to put it off. It's that tyranny of that particular moment that they're in. And let me just pause here, and can any of you put yourself, any point in your background where you felt that? You felt that tyranny of the moment, or what? If you ever came to feeling that kind of pressure?
I'll give you an example, and it's sad to say, but
my own example, when I graduated from college, one thing that these people often don't have, and got a job, another thing that they don't have, and moved to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. I had like $5 to last me a whole 4 days for food. So I got ramen and I got a bunch of others. That's the closest I have come to feeling that tyranny of the moment. And that's nothing. That's nothing. If you think about that, what are some of the, go ahead.
I'm not even, because I've never even been in that situation. I mean, I've never felt that, things were just gonna go sideways and never return. But I know what it's like to have stressors and like one thing after another happens, but I can actually feel it. I know, oh my gosh, all of this is going on, it's very abnormal, my blood pressure goes up, I get a little frantic, and I'm almost wondering, if you're constantly subjected to these things, those triggers aren't going off. So you're not figuring out how to quickly address the problem because it's just one more day of the same thing. You become desensitized almost to this tyranny, where all you're doing is just going about your day as if this stuff doesn't exist. I think that might be more of the problem.
And
Picture this, and you all know this, that the typical neighbor that we help is a single mom with kids. So, what kind of attention does that child get? And I'm not being critical of the moms, but what kind of attention does that child get in that situation, in that scenario, where they're trying to solve 18 problems and are they where's the time to read to their kids? So it's just kind of an endless loop, and I think it's fair to say most of us Vincentians have no idea in the world what these people are going through. So it's harder than ever. It is getting increasingly difficult to wind through the agencies that you have to deal with. We had, during the pandemic times, we had a rent team that Deb led that helped folks impacted by COVID get rent help. And we were trained to do that. And I'll tell you, I'm relatively smart, and I was trained, and I still had problems filling out all the crap you have to fill out to get help. How does somebody do this that doesn't have all the advantages that I have or our rent team folks have? There is a great example, great program that can give you a little taste of what this is like. It's called the cost of poverty simulation. Has anybody done that? Anybody, is that familiar to anybody? Okay, so a couple people have. If you have the opportunity to participate in a cost of poverty simulation, you should take the opportunity to do that. It's about, 3 hours, Deb? 4 hours, something like that? 2 to 3. Okay. Great way to experience what that is like yourself. So let's look a bit at a relationship between experiences and beliefs. What drives our image of the future? What are our beliefs about the future? So most of, those of us in that working class, middle class category, we believe that we can change the future with good choices now. I think most of us would agree. That's school. That's what we've learned growing up. Generational poverty, the typical belief on what destiny is for someone in generational poverty is, my future is going to be pretty much the same as it is right now, and pretty much the same as my parents' future and my friend's future, and that's essentially no future. So what about for driving forces? What will help you get to those outcomes? Well, for working class, middle class, it's work and achievement, and I would add school there. School, work, and achievement. The driving forces in generational poverty is just survival. It's just being able to make it from one day to the next day and counting on other people around you to help you stay halfway sane. It might be help, with babysitting. It might be, my car broke down, can you take me, to the grocery store? I've been kicked out of my apartment, can I sleep on your floor for a few days? All those kinds of things, people in generational poverty count on that more than others of us do. And there's other factors as well, time and money, and you can see that in both of those, the orientation is future for middle class and working class, and very much present for folks in generational poverty. And all of this just leads to barriers to escape. It's once you are at that place of having all those things swirling around and not believing in yourself that there's a better life, it's very difficult to, there's a lot of barriers to escaping that. Distrust in institutions. There's so much distrust in institutions, and sometimes for new neighbors, if we're seeing a new neighbor, there can be distrust in us too, which we have to kind of pay attention to. So this will just kind of finishes our list of the contributors to poverty. There's community resources. Now, one of the things that has improved to a degree is jobs are more available today than they've been for quite a while. Pay is somewhat better than it's been for a while. Transportation, maybe yes, maybe no. But there's exploitation of people in poverty. There are political and economic structures. We've talked about some of those that just continue to keep people in this, in the tyranny of the moment mindset. So what can we do to help? First of all, and most importantly, it's understanding the situation that our neighbors face. And, when you go in and you see the big screen TV, that may be because that's all they have. That is all they have that can give them a little bit of a semblance of normality, is that TV or the cell phone or something like that. We really have to, and I think honestly it's almost impossible to put yourself in their situation and understand. You just have to accept that they're doing that in the majority of cases, they are doing the absolute best that they can do. And you're just there to help them. So what we are doing is moving to more of a systemic change model with mentoring programs and advocacy. And we're establishing tools here. Deb has been a primary mover with that to help people who want to try and who have a glimmer that life can be different, help them to achieve that. So we have a program called Getting Ahead, Bridges Out of Poverty. The actual name of that program is Getting Ahead in a Just Getting By World. It is a training, an understanding and training program for folks who have been in this poverty cycle. We've run, Deb, how many programs have we run now?
Oh, boy. Maybe 10 or 12.
Already, okay.
Yeah, maybe 12, 15, yeah. Might know about that.
At different
Conferences typically sponsor these programs. We get 12 to 15 or 8 to 12 participants, and they go through a 15-week program that helps them to really, I think it helps them to understand the circumstances that they're in and dream a little bit. establish some of those. What do you want? What would you like to achieve? And help to rebuild some of what we all had when we were growing up. And some of these have been very successful. We've had real success stories out of this. Gene?
Well, I was going to say, one of the neat things about getting ahead and getting by world is that there are no teachers there. We're not teaching them anything. The individual members of the group are teaching each other. And that has worked very well. The one at Precious Blood worked very well.
Great point.
Great point. We have a follow-up to that program that's primarily on financial literacy that helps people a little more intensely with budgeting and financial planning and those kinds of things. So that's a program that we have that that really helps. We do a lot of this. Our call takers do a lot of bottom-up advocacy with from the home visit, and that is working with landlords, working with utility companies to educate them and just to help them to work better with our neighbor in need. We do some work with elected representatives to try to ensure through Voice of the Poor that they understand the situation better and that they can advocate more for those neighbors in need. Next slide. Who speaks for the society? Just an important piece of information. We advocate as individuals based on personal experience. We don't speak on behalf of the society. Conference presidents speak for conferences, council for council. Just a reminder of that. Here are some advocacy resources, and we also have some other, so let's stop here for a second and talk a little bit about this. Or wait a minute, I think of one slide. Well, we'll save that for a second. So we've seen that poverty is not simple. It's not easy. There's more than one pattern. Tyranny of the moment is very much there for our neighbors in need. At the conference level, we need to understand what types of poverty occur within our own neighbor community. Acknowledge that tyranny of the moment, learn more. We have a Serving in Hope Module 4 that is helpful with that. This, if not me, then who, is a good program for empowering our neighbors. And then we also have the Bridges material, and in our case, the Getting Ahead programs. Very big help with that any conference can use. Incarnation has used it several times, Precious Blood. So if anyone is interested in taking that back, we have conferences, and we also have Deb that would be very helpful to you if it's something that you want to explore. Here's a quote from one of our past presidents. Do a little something, invite the Holy Spirit in, and see what one little thing God is calling us to do. Then look at what opens up around that one little thing. Look, pray, be open. Then take that one little step. I like that.